So check this out. I'll tell you why I think Joe Biden's panicking, and I'll tell you why I think we are inching closer towards this. The Democratic base in this country is absolutely insane. Not like the Republicans are as a party are doing much better, but the Democrats are split dramatically from like moderate default Democrats who don't really pay attention to the fringe far left. The far left control more of the manifesto for the Democrats than the moderates do, who don't really pay attention. You can see this in the Pew Research, where the spike is actually further left. What does that mean? They tell Joe Biden we want open borders. We want total amnesty. But Joe Biden can't win on those positions. So what happens? In office, he says something like, okay, we're going to stop Trump's evil remain in Mexico policy. So now all the migrants come in, it's catch and release. They get caught, they get released in the community. Now you have children sleeping under bridges in the dirt in McAllen, Texas, because Joe Biden needs to take actions the far left wants, but then can't actually deal with the influx of migrants and migrant children because the policy is insane and makes no sense. So what does he do? The Biden administration has been trafficking children into other Republican states under the noses of the leadership of those states. The Tennessee Republicans freaked out when the whistleblower came out with this video footage showing that they were using, I guess now there's a whistleblower talking to Tucker Carlson saying they're using the Texas Air Force bases to take migrant kids and traffic them to other states because Biden can't come out and say, we're turning the children away into the desert. Because that was Trump's policy. Oh, no, he can't come out and say, we're going to put these kids in the concentration camps the Democrats were complaining about for 5 years, although they're doing that anyway. So he's got to shuffle it under the rug. But eventually the Republicans in these red states find out about it. The sheriff in Ohio finds out what they're doing. And these states are now outraged. The federal government is not actually doing anything to serve the people, but is actively in a panic to shuffle the problem under the rug while actively refusing to solve the problem. In fact, making the problem worse. You imagine Biden keeps doing things like that, and you're going to see states saying, we will not comply.
Okay. So that's that's a lead up to it. But okay, assuming that something happens and then a state does secede, like let's just pick Texas. And I don't know, would it be organized? Would it be 6 states at once? Would it be one state that goes first? That has a lot to do with if it would succeed or not. Because if 49 states seceded, it would succeed. If one state tried, it would probably fail. But what would it look like? A state says, we hereby declare we are our sovereign country.
You're too left brain on this one.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't need to be a bunch of guys in suits walking in and saying, I hereby declare. It could literally just be that a guy in Texas stops taking the phone calls of the federal government because he doesn't care anymore. Because the influence of the federal government has been weakening. So a law enforcement officer looks at his phone and it says ICE, and he goes, I don't even care. What were you saying, sir? And then over time, it just breaks apart. So that'll take over a long period of time.
That would be something like the governor sending their own National Guard to the border in place of the federal government as an example. But like we've seen this before under the Obama administration. Sheriffs were refusing this. And I think the one thing that would actually lead to a potential civil war is something like hyperinflation or extended inflation, because once the money starts becoming less valuable, that's when you get people in the streets and everybody starts panicking. But to your point about the immigration thing, this is one of the biggest mistakes the Trump administration made throughout its entire time. The reason they were putting the kids in cages, quote unquote, was because they wanted to deter children from showing up to the border. And the Trump administration, as far as I know, never made the moral case for a harsh policy on the border. And we see what happens when you're soft on that. There's kids that are being dumped over here. Like I was at CPAC. I met guys that went to the border and they showed me photos of kids with disabilities that were just literally dumped over the fence by coyotes. Like they can't walk and they're being dropped off because Biden, Freudian slip right there, sent the signal to people. I mean, Obama did the same thing, if you remember the unaccompanied minors things pre-Trump. But Biden sent the signal that if your kids come here, at least this is how it was translated into Latin America, that if your kids come here, we'll take them, which is worse than saying, if your families come here, we'll take them, because now we have all these kids going on this dangerous journey, 7,000 miles. If you've seen it, they come up on these trains, a bunch of them fall off. It's a disaster. You have to make the moral case for strict enforcement. And we're seeing this across the country in not just immigration policy, but in San Francisco, where they don't enforce shoplifting, everything breaks down.
So what's happening now? Florida is sending troopers to Texas to help secure their border, and South Dakota is sending, I think, National Guard. Because the federal government isn't doing it. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West is running to primary Greg Abbott because he says Abbott is waiting on permission from the federal government to defend its own border. And he makes a really good point.
Abbott needs to take a stand.
Oh, that was brutal.
Oh, come on, man.
Metaphorically.
Yeah.
Also, DeSantis is running for president. That's why he's sending the troopers. Like, let's be honest.
You think
about
so?
That. 100%.
Oh, okay.
Against Trump, though?
I saw the CPAC poll. They did one with Trump and one without Trump. Without Trump, 58%.
Yep.
So he's probably trying to say, hey, buddy, endorse me.
And I think DeSantis would in a lot of ways, probably be better.
Yeah.
Way better.
Because, and people are like, they'll smear him, they'll attack him in the media. Yeah, but Trump really boils liberal blood.
Yeah.
DeSantis, they're going to be like, I don't know who that is and I don't care. You're not going to be able to rally people the same way.
Well, DeSantis isn't going to wake up, shoot himself in both feet, and wonder why there's blood all over the floor every day. Like
He's
Trump,
not going to be tweeting these disgusting horse faces yelling at me on the internet. Nah, he's a bit more tactful. But I will say, we've definitely seen some of this under Obama. There was a period, I can't remember when this was. I think it may have been under Bush, actually, where, actually, I don't know, maybe it was Obama. We saw a wave of states asserting sovereignty. They were like declaring that we are independent, sovereign, and retain our rights and everything. And it was like they all started doing it.
10th Amendment movement.
Right.
That's what that is.
But I think that just shows the escalation. Like, a lot of people say this all started with Trump, and then people say, actually, it started with Obama. Actually, it started with Bush. Well, yeah, literally, they're all connected. There's no, we're not in a vacuum. It wasn't like one day someone pressed reset on the country, and then we all woke up and said, who should be the president? It's all connected, going all the way back since even probably the colonial days.
Yeah, I think it tracks technology's change, because no longer do we have to send a letter and send someone to go ride a horse to Washington, D.C. to tell them what I told them to tell them. Like, we have telephones and computers, and we can work in a decentralized manner. The states can function we can decentralize power way easier with modern technology. And I think the consciousness is now kind of showing that, but it's coming out as secession, when it's more of a decentralization.
I'll tell you what the problem is. It's the absolutism of the Democratic Party and the inability of conservatives, or I should say of the Republicans and many conservatives, to assert themselves on things. So I'll explain what that means. The Democrats demand absolute law. So they say, we should ban these guns. And then you're like, dude, I live in West Virginia. We've got coyotes and bears and stuff. Like, come on, you can't, and also I hunt. I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm not worried about this stuff. You live in a different place. It makes no sense, a lot of the things the Democrats advocate for, because how it affects the other half of the country who don't live in cities. But they demand that absolute law. If the city is negatively impacted, everyone in the country must be under the same law. Republicans don't come out and say, we demand X. They say, no, wait, don't. Speed bumps for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Over a long enough period of time, the Democrats keep passing laws that are favorable for cities. Well, probably not even favorable for cities, but designed to be favorable. Or I'm sorry, they're designed to appear favorable to cities, although whether or not they actually work, I think most of the time they don't. And then rural people get negatively impacted by it.
But what percentage of the Democrats is it? Because I just had the New York City Democratic primary, and they elected the cop who wants to bring back stop and frisk and the anti-crime unit, which is horribly named because the police are all anti-crime. It should be called the anti-shooting unit. But they elected the tough on crime cop, and he won in the first round of voting, and when they did the ranked choice and they did that, he finally got over the top. Maya Wiley, the Bill de Blasio woman, who literally her campaign was like, I'm a black woman, vote for me, I'm progressive, never did anything in her life except serve as a counselor for Bill de Blasio. Like, she did worse when they ranked it up. Like, she was the second place, which is horrible, and I'm ashamed of my city, but it's the Democrats. What are you going to do? But Adams not only won, but he won with minorities. Like, he got 45 to 75% of the vote in all of the majority black or Hispanic areas. That's how he won.
But think about how amazing it is that he still wants to confiscate guns. He's still very much,
Except for him, he can have a gun.
Right, exactly. So he very much he's still a Democrat. And so we're like, but he is pro-cop. Like, think about that logic where it's like, well, at least he doesn't want to completely abolish the police. But he's still bad on a lot of these things.
But true. But like Giuliani was a gun grabber as mayor of New York City. Michael Bloomberg was a gun grabber and a nanny stater. Like, he didn't want you to have a big soda. So
yeah, right.
But I always say New York is different. So like, as much as I want to say, oh, the Democrats are different, the reason New York City is different, and you've been to New York City, is because everybody rides the subway and everybody walks on the streets. So Democrats actually have to live with the policies that they advocate for there. They can't escape out into the burbs. That's why we get tough on crime mayors, and that's why I had faith in New York City. And I said that this election would determine whether or not I would consider moving or not. because we actually do vote tough on crime. It's not Chicago. It's not Baltimore, which I drove through today.
And then what happens is, because they're actually not tough on crime, the extremists then protest the Democrats' own policies. They go around and they constantly obstruct the streets. They protest. New York's not a big riot place, but it never ends. And then that turns into a national movement. So because people like, Eric Adams, right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, they call him tough on crime by New York standards.
No, he's legit. He's like, I'm going to bring back stop and frisk. Like, the Republicans weren't like, we're going to bring back stop and frisk. He's like, no, we're going to shake down people and crack some skulls.
That's the problem, you see. What happens is then Black Lives Matter comes out and turns that local problem from Democrats into a national problem, and then demands everyone in the country live by this ideology. And because they have such influence in national level communications, politics, marketing, and corporations, because New York is a hub for that, some random dude in West Virginia who lives in the mountains next to his brother Cletus, who's actually 20 miles away, has to have new laws on his guns because of the failures of New York Democrats. And it's not necessarily just Eric. It's not like it's Eric Adams' fault. It's that the people who live in these cities continually elect the same kind of people who do very similar things with very similar policies that don't work.
Well, I mean, you're right to a certain extent, because, I mean, New York City distinctly banned chokeholds. But after George Floyd died from a maneuver that would have been illegal for an NYPD officer, we still cut $1 billion out of our police because we had to solve the problem of Minneapolis's policing issue.
People in London are protesting over George Floyd.
Hands up, don't shoot, which Michael Brown didn't have his hands up, and the London police don't carry guns.
Yep.
Like,
never
absurd.
Happened. Yeah. So what's happening is you have this, Ian mentioned it's technology, it's the internet, it's communications. It's not about any of the policy. It is literally my tribe must win at all costs and we will demand power. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.